I woke up to bass drums pounding through my bedroom floor at 6 a.m. Outside my window, 1,000 strangers had turned my cattle ranch into Coachella. Tents covered 40 acres of grazing land. RVs blocked my cattle gates. A full DJ booth sat where my grandfather's prize bull used to sleep, while portable toilets formed a neat row across pastures cleared by 3 generations of my family. The woman orchestrating this invasion? Karen Rutherford, HOA president, standing in my driveway with a bullhorn like she owned the place. Festival goers were helping themselves to my water spigots while she directed parking with the confidence of someone who'd never been charged by an 1,800-pound bull. But Karen was about to get a masterclass in why you don't trespass on a Marine's ranch. My Black Angus bulls don't negotiate with Karens. What would you do finding strangers camping on your land? Drop your location below. Bet your HOA Stories pale next to this madness. My name's Hank Morrison, 52 years old, retired marine mechanic turned cattle rancher. 3 years ago, I inherited this 40-acre spread from my grandfather in Millfield County, Texas. After 20 years fixing Humvees in sand and heat, plus a divorce that left me broken, this ranch saved what was left of my sanity. Every morning starts the same. Coffee on the wraparound porch, listening to meadowlarks sing over rolling pastures. The scent of sage mixes with morning dew while my cracked leather boots rest on splintered wood railings. Timber my grandfather split by hand in 1962. The rough texture tells stories of 60 years weathering Texas storms. In the distance, my Black Angus cattle low softly in dawn mist, their warm breath visible in cool air that carries the sweet smell of alfalfa hay and the honest earthiness of fresh manure. I raise heritage cattle, sell organic beef at farmers markets. Honest work that quiets the war demons better than any VA prescription. Watching life grow instead of fixing killing machines. But peace attracts vultures when there's money involved. 2 years ago, developers discovered our rolling hills were perfect for McMansions. Suddenly, I had neighbors with manicured lawns who measured grass height with rulers and considered farm animals neighborhood blight. That's when they formed the Millfield Ranch Estates HOA. Enter Karen Rutherford, 48, real estate agent turned suburban dictator. Everything about Karen screams manufactured. Bleached teeth, honey-sweet voice hiding steel underneath. Spray tan that makes her glow orange as a traffic cone. She drives a white Escalade like she's commanding tanks, always clutching her sacred clipboard like a weapon. My property predates her development by 60 years, should be protected by agricultural exemptions, grandfathered completely out of HOA authority. But Karen doesn't believe in inconvenient things like existing property rights. Her first attack came Tuesday morning. I was mending fence when that Escalade crunched up my gravel drive like she owned the place. Karen stepped out in designer heels completely wrong for ranch dirt, clipboard already positioned for battle. "Mr. Morrison," she chirped, fake smile wide as a crocodile's, "we need to discuss your unsightly fence situation affecting our property values." "What's wrong with my fence, ma'am?" "Well," she wrinkled her nose like something died, "livestock operations create terrible odors. The sight of cattle from our premium homes is frankly quite rural. Millfield Ranch Estates has standards now." The way she said rural, like it was a 4-letter word, like land my grandfather cleared by hand, was somehow offensive to her subdivision sensibilities. "These cattle have grazed here since before you were born, ma'am. Times change, Mr. Morrison." Her smile never flickered, but her eyes went arctic. "Remove that roadside fencing by Friday. Move your animals to back pastures where they won't disturb civilized people. Refuse, and we'll fine you $50 daily, escalating to $500. Ma'am, you have no authority over my property." Karen pulled out a thick folder, slapping it against her clipboard. "Easement rights, community standards, nuisance ordinances. I've researched every angle, Mr. Morrison. Your grandfather's little hobby farm doesn't belong in our modern community anymore." Little hobby farm, said with pure venom. Like 3 generations of Morrison blood and sweat meant nothing to her real estate empire. Here's what every rural landowner needs to know. Agricultural right-to-farm laws protect established farming operations from nuisance complaints, but only if you document everything and know your state's specific protections. Research yours before some Karen tries this garbage. That night, my neighbor Dolores Martinez brought casseroles and intelligence. That woman's been at the courthouse all week, researching property boundaries and tax records. She's hunting for something, Hank. Meanwhile, Karen's spineless husband Brad started skulking around my fence line after dark, photographing cattle droppings like evidence in a criminal case. But here's what Karen didn't know. While researching those old property surveys, she'd discovered something that would change everything. A boundary error from the 1960s that put her fancy HOA entrance monument on my land. My bulls were grazing peacefully, unaware they were about to become Texas legends. Karen wasted no time escalating her war on my ranch. 3 days after our fence conversation, she filed a formal complaint with Millfield County claiming my cattle were a public nuisance and health hazard. The woman had done her homework. She submitted a portfolio that would make prosecutors jealous. Telephoto photos of bull manure near the road, a petition signed by 12 homeowners demanding livestock removal, and a detailed report about excessive fly populations. She even scheduled the county inspector's visit for peak July heat, when Texas sun turns cow patties into fly breeding conventions, and the air shimmers with the acrid smell of livestock under summer pressure. But Karen made one critical mistake. She assumed all government employees were on her payroll. County Inspector Jake Winters stepped out of his truck Tuesday morning, and I nearly choked on my coffee. Combat boots crunched on gravel as my old Marine buddy approached. We'd served together in 3rd Marine Logistics Group, spent 18 months fixing vehicles in the same desert hellhole where brotherhood gets forged in sand and diesel fumes. "Hank Morrison, you stubborn jarhead," Jake grinned, crushing my hand in a grip that could crack walnuts. "Heard some real estate princess is trying to shut down your operation." "Jake Winters, Semper Fi, brother." The familiar rasp of his laugh brought back memories of better times. "Yeah, HOA president thinks she runs the county now." Jake's expression darkened as we walked the fence line, his boots kicking up dust that hung in the still air like fine powder. "Listen, Hank, I gotta inspect by the book. But you should know, Karen Rutherford's dating County Commissioner Williams. Word is they're pushing for agricultural rezoning across this whole area. Your ranch isn't just an eyesore to her, it's a roadblock to millions in development profits." The pieces clicked together like a rifle bolt sliding home. This wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics. Karen and her boyfriend were planning to flip the entire area from agricultural to commercial development. "She's been targeting other farmers too," Jake continued, running calloused fingers along my fence posts, testing their strength. 3 operations shut down this year, all sold to the same development company at below-market prices after mysterious compliance issues appeared. While Jake conducted his official inspection, which my operation passed with flying colors, I launched my counterattack. That afternoon, trail cameras went up around the property perimeter. If Karen wanted to play investigator, I'd document every trespass. But I didn't stop there. Time for some Marine-style reconnaissance. A quick internet search revealed Karen's real estate license number. Public records showed she'd been flipping houses without proper permits for 2 years. 3 properties sold with renovations that somehow never appeared on building permit applications. I screenshot everything, then filed an anonymous tip with the building inspector's office. Let's see how Karen likes having inspectors crawl up her ass for a change. Here's what every property owner needs to know. Agricultural right-to-farm laws protect established operations from nuisance complaints, but only if you document everything and know your state's specific protections. Research your local statutes before someone weaponizes bureaucracy against you. Jake's official report praised my operations compliance with all county standards, but he pulled me aside with a warning that made my blood run cold. "Hank, Williams isn't just corrupt. He's got federal connections, real political muscle. Karen's been bragging around town about having the right friends to solve the farmer problem. Watch your 6, brother." That evening brought Karen's next escalation. The sharp crack of designer heels on gravel announced her arrival at my fence line, this time with a nervous surveyor in a cheap suit. "Mr. Morrison," she called sweetly, "I'd like you to meet Harold Pemberton from Accurate Property Surveys. We're conducting boundary verification to ensure everyone understands their property lines." The surveyor looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am, we really should have the property owner's permission before—" "Harold," Karen's voice turned to ice. "We discussed this. The HOA has every right to verify community boundaries that affect property values." I watched them pace measurements along my fence, Karen directing him to specific spots like she knew exactly what she was hunting for. The metallic taste of anger filled my mouth as I realized this wasn't random harassment. She was building a legal ambush. That night, Dolores called with disturbing intelligence. "Hank, honey, saw Karen at the post office questioning your mailman about your bills and legal notices. She specifically asked about tax statements. That woman's fishing for your financial pressure points." The next morning delivered Karen's masterstroke, a certified letter demanding $3,200 in back property taxes that she claimed to have discovered in county records. The letter offered to help by paying my tax debt, then foreclosing on the lien. But what Karen didn't know was that while she'd been researching tax records, she'd missed something crucial in those old property surveys. Something that would turn her entire legal strategy into a loaded gun pointed at her own head. Time to show this predator what happens when you corner a Marine defending his grandfather's legacy. Karen didn't waste time exploiting what she thought was my financial weakness. Within 48 hours of sending that tax lien threat, she filed paperwork at the courthouse claiming her right to pay my back taxes, then foreclose when I couldn't repay her with 20% interest. The predator had discovered an obscure Texas statute allowing third parties to purchase tax liens on delinquent properties, pay someone's overdue taxes, charge extortionist interest rates, and if they can't repay within a year, force a sale. Legal loan sharking, and Karen had weaponized it into an art form. But she made one fatal assumption, that a broke veteran wouldn't sacrifice everything to protect his grandfather's legacy. I liquidated my entire retirement account that same afternoon. Every penny scraped together from 20 years of military service, my only financial security after divorce, and PTSD had already claimed everything else. The walk to the courthouse felt like a funeral march, my boots echoing off marble floors worn smooth by a century of property disputes. When I slapped $3,200 cash on the tax clerk's counter, the metallic taste of victory mixed with the bitter knowledge that Karen had just cost me my entire future. "Taxes paid in full," I announced loud enough for courthouse gossips to spread the word. "Tell Karen Rutherford the Morrison Ranch will never be for sale." But my counterpunch was just beginning. That cash payment triggered something Karen hadn't anticipated. It gave me legal standing to demand a complete property survey review. I hired Maxine Morgan, the best agricultural attorney in 3 counties, a razor-sharp woman who'd built her reputation defending family farms against corporate vultures. Her office smelled like leather law books and strong coffee, the kind of place where justice gets planned over late-night strategy sessions. When Maxine spread my property documents across her mahogany desk, her eyes lit up like she'd struck oil. "Hank," she said, her voice carrying the deadly satisfaction of a prosecutor spotting perjury, "Karen just handed us a nuclear weapon." She unrolled a yellowed survey document that smelled like decades of municipal storage and bureaucratic neglect. The original 1960s boundary markers were moved during road construction in 1987. Nobody bothered to update the legal descriptions. My heart hammered as she traced red survey lines that told an incredible story. The original Morrison Ranch extended 2 acres further east than current maps showed, land that included the drainage easement where Karen's HOA had built their fancy stone entrance monument. "She's been collecting maintenance fees from homeowners for land she doesn't actually own," Maxine continued, her lawyer's smile sharp as a scalpel. "That's criminal fraud, Hank. We're talking felony charges and federal mail fraud if she used postal service for those fee collections. Here's what every property owner needs to know. Original survey stakes take legal precedence over newer maps unless formally challenged in court, and many boundary errors result from construction projects that moved historical markers without proper documentation. Always verify your actual property lines before accepting anyone else's claims about boundaries." While I was processing this bombshell, Karen escalated her psychological warfare. The acrid smell of cigarette smoke announced her arrival at my fence line the next morning, where she stood photographing my cattle with telephoto lenses like some deranged wildlife paparazzi. "Mr. Morrison," she called out, abandoning all pretense of neighborly politeness, "I hope you enjoyed your little courthouse victory." But this war is far from over. "Ma'am, those bulls are contained on private property behind legal fencing that exceeds county requirements. For now." Her predatory smile returned with full malicious force. "But when children get injured by aggressive livestock, property rights become secondary to public safety, and accidents, well, they happen to stubborn farmers who refuse to accept modern reality." The threat was barely veiled, but the malice was crystal clear. Karen wasn't just trying to steal my land anymore. She was planning to create an incident that would justify seizing it. Meanwhile, my community was starting to rally. Dolores organized a phone tree warning other longtime residents about Karen's tactics. 3 farmers at the weekend market offered financial support for my legal battle. Local feed store owner Buck Martinez started spreading word about Karen's property flipping schemes, and suddenly half the county was watching her every move. That night, my trail cameras captured the smoking gun. Karen's spineless husband, Brad, skulking around my property at midnight with wire cutters, attempting to sabotage my electric fence. The infrared footage showed him clearly cutting through wire, then fleeing when motion sensors triggered floodlights that lit up the darkness like stadium beams. Criminal trespass, vandalism, attempted livestock endangerment, conspiracy to create a public safety hazard, all captured in high-definition video with timestamps. Sheriff Kowalski's weathered face hardened like granite when he reviewed the footage the next morning. Brad Rutherford just graduated from HOA harassment to criminal sabotage. This gives us probable cause for a much deeper investigation into their whole operation. But Karen's desperation was showing in increasingly reckless moves. Anonymous tips flooded local media about dangerous agricultural operations. 3 county commissioners received concerned citizen calls about livestock safety. Karen was burning through every political connection she had. She didn't realize that her frantic campaign to destroy me was creating a perfect evidence trail of conspiracy, fraud, and criminal harassment. Every fake complaint, every doctored photo, every midnight sabotage mission was being documented by cameras she didn't know existed. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and Karen had no idea the trap was already closing. Karen's desperation reached nuclear levels when she announced her masterstroke. The Community Safety Festival, a massive outdoor event that would demonstrate once and for all how my cattle operation threatened innocent families. The announcement came via glossy flyers distributed to every mailbox in 3 zip codes. Educational Family Fun Day, learning to coexist with agricultural operations, promised food trucks, bounce houses, live music, and interactive livestock safety demonstrations. What those flyers didn't mention was that Karen planned to hold this 1,000-person festival on my private ranch land without my permission. Her justification was a masterpiece of bureaucratic fraud. According to Karen, HOA bylaws allowed community events on any property within district boundaries for educational purposes benefiting neighborhood safety. She'd produced a doctored survey map showing my front pasture as community common area, and somehow convinced the county to issue permits for music, vendors, and portable facilities. The acrid smell of diesel exhaust filled the morning air as event setup trucks arrived at dawn, their drivers ignoring private property signs like they were movie props. Karen directed the invasion from my own driveway, clipboard in hand, wearing a safety vest that made her look like a traffic cone with delusions of authority. "Mr. Morrison," she called out when I appeared on my porch, coffee mug steaming in the cool morning air, "I hope you'll participate in today's educational activities. The community is very excited to learn about responsible livestock management. Ma'am, this is private property. You're committing criminal trespass. Oh, but I have full legal authority." She waved a thick folder of official documents with theatrical flourish. "County permits, insurance certificates, safety inspections, all properly filed. Your little hobby ranch is part of the greater community now, whether you accept reality or not." But I wasn't going down without a fight. While Karen orchestrated her illegal festival, I activated my own counter-strategy. Maxine Morgan filed emergency motions with every available court. Local ranchers arrived with livestock trailers ready to evacuate my cattle if things went sideways. I contacted the State Agricultural Commissioner's office about permit fraud and the county DA about organized criminal trespass. Most importantly, I called Marcus Thompson, investigative reporter for the Regional Tribune, who'd been following Karen's property-flipping schemes for months. "Hank, this is exactly what I've been waiting for," Marcus said, his voice crackling with journalistic hunger. "She's finally overplayed her hand. I'll have cameras documenting every illegal move she makes." The trap Karen was setting was diabolical in its simplicity. She was betting my bulls would either prove harmless, making her dangerous livestock claims look ridiculous, or actually threaten festival goers, giving her the incident she needed to have my operation declared a public menace. I tried for an emergency injunction, but the regular judge was conveniently out of town. The substitute? Judge Patricia Whitman, Karen's college sorority sister, who denied my request with barely concealed satisfaction. Mr. Morrison, the permits appear properly executed, and the event serves legitimate educational purposes. Your concerns are noted but legally insufficient. Here's what every property owner needs to know. Emergency injunctions require proof of irreparable harm, but property damage often isn't enough to stop events with valid permits. You need documented evidence of immediate physical danger to people, and even then, political connections can override legal protections. Always have backup plans when fighting well-connected predators. That's when Dolores revealed the true scope of Karen's conspiracy. She'd overheard a phone conversation between Karen and her insurance agent, discussing livestock incident claims and preventable tragedies caused by inadequate rancher safety protocols. "Hank, honey," Dolores whispered over my kitchen table, her weathered hands trembling with outrage. "That woman wants your bulls to hurt someone. She's planning to claim your fencing was inadequate, sue you into bankruptcy, then buy the property at foreclosure auction for pennies on the dollar." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Karen wasn't just willing to endanger innocent families. She was counting on it. Festival goers would include children, elderly folks, people who'd never been around livestock. If something went wrong, she'd have her incident and the legal ammunition to destroy me completely. I spent Friday night preparing for battle. My prize bulls, Thunder, Diesel, and Maverick, got moved to the secure back pasture near the creek, behind double fencing and multiple warning signs. Additional trail cameras went up with night vision capabilities. Sheriff Kowalski positioned extra patrol units nearby, but his hands were tied by Karen's fraudulent permits. "This whole setup stinks to high heaven, Hank," he admitted. "But she's got official paperwork for everything. All I can do is respond fast when her plan inevitably goes sideways." The morning of the festival brought an invasion of epic proportions. Cars lined the county road for half a mile. Families with children streamed across my pastures like they owned the place. The thunderous noise of generators mixed with carnival music and the excited chatter of 1,000 voices treating my grandfather's sacred land like a county fair. Karen held court at her information booth, giving interviews to local news crews about modernizing backward rural communities and teaching stubborn old farmers about community progress. But Karen had made one fatal error. She assumed my bulls were just oversized dairy cows. She was about to learn the hard way why 1,800-pound territorial breeding bulls don't appreciate uninvited guests. As the crowd swelled toward maximum chaos, Karen grabbed her bullhorn and sealed her fate. "Ladies and gentlemen, for our grand finale, we're visiting those famous, dangerous bulls. Follow me for an up-close educational experience." She was leading a parade of innocent families straight into Thunder's domain. While Karen orchestrated her illegal festival, Maxine Morgan was conducting surgical strikes in the county courthouse basement. What she discovered in those dusty filing cabinets would detonate Karen's entire criminal empire like a controlled demolition. My phone buzzed as carnival music blared across my violated pastures. I ducked behind the barn where the honest smell of aged hay and worn leather contrasted sharply with the acrid diesel fumes poisoning my grandfather's sacred air. "Hank," Maxine's voice practically vibrated through the speaker with barely contained excitement. "I just found the nuclear weapon. Karen's been running a completely fraudulent HOA for 2 solid years. The words hit me like a physical punch to the gut. "What the hell do you mean, fraudulent?" The original Millfield Ranch Estates HOA charter expired in March 2022. Karen filed for renewal, but the Texas State HOA Oversight Board rejected her application due to unresolved boundary disputes and improper documentation. She's been operating a criminal enterprise ever since. My hands started trembling as the implications crashed over me like a tsunami. Every sleepless night, every threatening letter, every moment of terror about losing my grandfather's ranch, all based on Karen wielding authority she never legally possessed. "Hank, every single fee she's collected, every violation notice she's issued, every permit she's obtained under HOA authority, it's all systematic criminal fraud. Jesus Christ, how much money are we talking about?" $47,000 in fraudulent HOA fees collected over 24 months, but that's just the appetizer. Maxine's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "I found encrypted email correspondence between Karen and Commissioner Williams discussing development kickback percentages. She's been paying him 15% of every property flip profit in exchange for political protection and insider information." The courthouse records painted a picture of corruption so systematic it belonged in a federal prosecutor's wet dreams. Williams had fast-tracked every permit application Karen submitted, actively suppressed citizen complaints against her operations, and provided confidential information about which properties were vulnerable to tax lien attacks. In return, Karen had been laundering money through his campaign fund and directly into numbered offshore accounts. "But here's the smoking gun that's going to destroy them both," Maxine continued, her voice rising with prosecutorial bloodlust. Certified letter from the State Oversight Board, dated exactly 6 months ago, formally warning Karen that continued operation without valid charter status constitutes felony fraud under state and federal statutes. She intercepted the letter, hid it from homeowners, and kept collecting illegal fees. The cosmic irony was so perfect it felt like divine intervention. Karen's psychotic obsession with destroying my ranch had created an airtight paper trail of her own federal crimes. Every threatening letter she'd sent, every fraudulent fine she'd issued, every illegal permit she'd obtained, documented evidence of systematic fraud that would send her to federal prison for decades. "Maxine, can we shut down this illegal festival immediately?" "We absolutely could call state authorities and end this circus right now," she said, her strategic lawyer's mind already calculating maximum damage. "But I think we should let Karen continue performing for the cameras." Marcus Thompson is documenting every single fraudulent authority claim she makes on live television. Every minute she continues this charade adds multiple felony charges to her eventual indictment. Here's what every homeowner needs to know. HOAs must maintain valid state charter status and file annual compliance reports with oversight boards. Always verify your HOA's legal standing through official state records before paying any fees, because fraudulent HOAs operating without legitimate authority are far more common than most people realize. One simple phone call to your state's oversight agency can expose illegal operations instantly. The power dynamic had completely and permanently shifted. Karen thought she was using this festival to orchestrate my public destruction, but she was actually staging her own federal execution in front of 1,000 witnesses. Every interview claiming HOA authority, every permit obtained through fraud, every illegal fee collected from trusting homeowners, building toward the most spectacular corruption prosecution in county history. I watched Karen through my field glasses, directing her criminal enterprise with that clipboard of worthless fake authority, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Absolute confidence mixed with righteous fury. The predator was about to become prey, and federal justice has very sharp teeth. With Karen's criminal empire exposed, it was time to assemble my own team for the final battle. This wasn't just about defending my ranch anymore. It was about bringing down a corruption network that had destroyed other families and would keep destroying them unless someone finally stood up and fought back with everything they had. My kitchen became mission control at 5 a.m., the smell of strong coffee mixing with crisp morning air that carried the distant sounds of Karen's festival setup crews violating my property. One by one, my allies gathered around the worn wooden table where 3 generations of Morrisons had planned everything from cattle breeding to surviving the Great Depression. Maxine Morgan arrived first, her briefcase stuffed with enough legal ammunition to level a small government. Her sharp eyes gleamed with the predatory satisfaction of a prosecutor who'd found the case that could make her career while serving justice on a silver platter. "Federal charges are a slam dunk," she said, spreading documents across the table like a general planning D-Day. "Mail fraud, conspiracy, public corruption under RICO statutes. We're looking at 20-year sentences minimum for both Karen and Williams." Jake Winters rolled up in his county truck, the crunch of gravel announcing his arrival along with boxes of evidence that could sink a battleship. "I've been documenting permit irregularities for months," he said, his weathered face grim with purpose. "Every contractor in the county knows Williams has been rubber stamping applications that should never have seen daylight." Sheriff Tom Kowalski arrived in his personal vehicle wearing civilian clothes but carrying the unmistakable authority of 30 years in law enforcement. "Officially, I can't participate in planning someone's legal destruction," he said with a wink that could cut glass. "Unofficially, I've got video evidence of criminal trespass, vandalism, and conspiracy to endanger public safety that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy." Dolores Martinez shuffled in with a thermos of coffee strong enough to wake the dead and a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. "Honey, I've got contact information for every homeowner who's been victimized by Karen's fake fees. 3 families lost their homes because they couldn't afford her illegal fines. They're ready for war." The final member of our team was Marcus Thompson. investigative reporter whose camera would document Karen's public destruction for posterity and profit. "This story goes national within hours," he said, adjusting equipment that looked like it belonged on a movie set. "Small-town corruption, military veteran defending family land, criminal conspiracy exposed by citizen journalism. CNN will be calling before sunset." Our strategy unfolded like a perfectly executed military operation, each element designed to maximize Karen's humiliation while ensuring airtight legal prosecution. Marcus would film every moment of Karen's festival, focusing on each fraudulent authority claim she made. Hidden cameras positioned around the property would capture additional criminal activity. Dolores would coordinate social media documentation, ensuring Karen's own words would convict her in the court of public opinion before she ever saw a federal courtroom. The moment Karen's festival ended, Maxine would simultaneously file complaints with the FBI, State Attorney General, and Federal Prosecutor's Office. Meanwhile, every homeowner who'd paid Karen's illegal fees would receive documentation proving the fraud, along with invitations to join a massive civil lawsuit seeking triple damages. Monday's town hall meeting would become Karen's public trial, with Marcus broadcasting live coverage while Maxine presented evidence that would destroy Karen's reputation more thoroughly than a nuclear weapon. Here's what every fraud victim needs to know. Qui tam whistleblower laws allow private citizens to file federal lawsuits against fraudsters on behalf of the government and keep 15 to 30% of recovered funds. These cases often recover millions while sending criminals to federal prison. Research your state's whistleblower protections before confronting organized crime masquerading as bureaucracy. The cattle protection plan was equally precise. Thunder, Diesel, and Maverick would remain in the secure back pasture behind double fencing with warning signs visible from space. Emergency livestock trailers were positioned for immediate evacuation if Karen's festival turned violent. Local ranchers stood by with trained herders who could control 1,800-pound bulls if Karen's stupidity endangered innocent families. "The beautiful thing," Jake observed, sipping coffee that could strip paint from barn siding, "is that Karen's own arrogance will be her downfall. She physically cannot resist claiming authority she doesn't have, especially when cameras are rolling." Community mobilization had exceeded our wildest expectations. Local farmers pledged $15,000 for legal costs. 3 regional cattle associations offered expert witnesses. Farmers market vendors were donating supplies for a legitimate counter-event on public property. Even the feed store was offering free hay for any ranchers willing to help evacuate livestock if Karen's festival turned into the disaster everyone expected. As sunrise painted the eastern sky the color of fresh blood, I felt something I hadn't experienced since returning from combat. Absolute confidence that comes from superior preparation meeting righteous cause. Karen thought she was orchestrating my destruction, but she was actually staging the most spectacular example of criminal justice this county had ever witnessed. The predator had walked into a trap designed by people who understood that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to destroy them so completely that they never threaten anyone again. Karen was about to learn why you don't declare war on Marines who've had months to prepare their counterattack. Time to unleash hell with hooves. Festival Day arrived like a natural disaster, complete with the chaos and destruction that follows when bureaucratic incompetence meets criminal arrogance. By 6 a.m., event trucks were rolling up my gravel drive like an invading army, their diesel engines coughing black smoke into air that had been pristine since my grandfather first cleared this land. Karen directed the invasion from my own driveway, wearing that safety vest like military dress uniform while wielding her clipboard with the authority of a field marshal commanding troops. Porta potties appeared in neat rows across pastures where my cattle usually grazed, their chemical stench mixing with the honest smell of earth that had never known such violation. "Mr. Morrison," she called out when I appeared on my porch with coffee steaming in the cool morning air. "I hope you'll participate constructively in today's educational activities." The community is extremely excited to learn about responsible agricultural management. "Ma'am, this is still private property. You're still committing criminal trespass." "Oh, but I have complete legal authority." She waved her folder of fraudulent documents with theatrical flourish that would have made Shakespeare proud. County permits, liability insurance, safety certifications, all properly executed through official channels. Your little hobby farm is part of the greater Millfield community now, whether you accept modern reality or not. The setup crews ignored my private property signs like they were movie props, positioning the DJ booth exactly where my grandfather's prize bull used to sleep and aiming speakers directly at my bedroom windows. Karen had planned this psychological warfare with military precision, designed to make my own home uninhabitable while she claimed educational authority. But Karen's arrogance was creating the perfect evidence trail for her own destruction. Marcus Thompson positioned himself strategically on public road with telephoto lenses that could count the serial numbers on Karen's fraudulent permits. Every word she spoke claiming HOA authority was being recorded in high definition, building the criminal case that would send her to federal prison. Meanwhile, my hidden trail cameras captured footage that would make prosecutors salivate with anticipation. Karen directing trespass operations, her husband Brad cutting fence wire, event workers dumping wastewater directly onto my property, criminal violations accumulating faster than unpaid parking tickets. The festival crowd began arriving around 9 a.m., families with children who'd been promised educational entertainment about livestock safety. These innocent people had no idea they were being used as human shields in Karen's final desperate attempt to create an incident that would justify seizing my ranch. Karen held impromptu press conferences throughout the morning, giving live Facebook interviews to her followers about teaching stubborn farmers, about community cooperation, and modernizing backward rural attitudes. Each statement created additional evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and criminal trespass that federal prosecutors would use to destroy her in court. Today's event demonstrates how agricultural operations can coexist peacefully with modern residential communities, she announced to a local TV crew, standing exactly where my bulls usually grazed. Some ranchers resist progress, but education and community pressure eventually overcome outdated thinking. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Karen was educating the community, all right, about how criminal fraud works when protected by corrupt politicians. But festival goers were starting to notice something wasn't quite right. Several families spotted my private property signs and asked Karen directly about permission to be there. Her responses created a trail of lies that would haunt her in federal court. Mr. Morrison initially consented to the educational event, she told one concerned father, but changed his mind at the last minute due to personal issues. However, community safety takes precedence over individual preferences. Complete fabrication, and Marcus got every word on video. By noon, the festival had exceeded its permitted capacity by over 300 people. Alcohol was being served without proper licensing. Food vendors were operating without health permits. Karen's criminal violations were multiplying faster than rabbits in springtime. Sheriff Kowalski documented noise ordinance violations with his official sound meter, recording decibel levels that exceeded county limits by 40%. The bass from Karen's DJ booth was literally rattling windows in my house while she claimed educational authority for acoustic assault. The most damaging evidence came when Karen's husband Brad was caught on camera attempting to sabotage my electric fence a second time. This time, he wasn't just cutting wire. He was installing a hidden switch that would allow someone to disable the entire containment system from outside my property. That's premeditated conspiracy to endanger public safety, Sheriff Kowalski observed grimly, reviewing the footage on his patrol car's laptop. Brad Rutherford just upgraded from misdemeanor vandalism to felony criminal endangerment. As afternoon sun beat down on the festival chaos, Karen made her most critical error. Intoxicated by media attention and convinced of her own invincibility, she announced the special surprise that would prove her livestock safety concerns were legitimate. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called out through her bullhorn, voice carrying across pastures that had witnessed 60 years of peaceful cattle operations. For our educational finale, we're going to visit the famous dangerous bulls that some people claim are perfectly safe. Follow me for an up-close learning experience. Karen was leading 200 trusting families toward my back pasture, where Thunder, Diesel, and Maverick were about to provide the most expensive education in livestock behavior that Texas had ever witnessed. The woman was walking straight into the jaws of justice, and she was bringing innocent witnesses to document her complete destruction. Karen's march toward my back pasture looked like a twisted parade with 200 innocent families following her bullhorn. Amplified promises of safe educational interaction with gentle livestock. The afternoon sun blazed overhead as she led this procession across land that had never seen such violation, her designer boots crunching on gravel paths worn smooth by 3 generations of Morrison cattle drives. "These bulls are completely harmless," Karen announced to her live Facebook audience. positioning herself like a tour guide at a petting zoo. Some stubborn ranchers exaggerate livestock dangers to avoid community responsibility. But today, we'll demonstrate the truth about these so-called dangerous animals. Every word was being recorded by Marcus Thompson's professional equipment and dozens of cell phones held by festival goers who thought they were documenting a fun family outing. Karen was creating an airtight video record of her own criminal negligence while claiming educational authority she'd never legally possessed. I positioned myself strategically near the pasture gate, cattle prod and emergency whistle ready, trusting my animals' training but prepared for the worst-case scenario that Karen's ignorance was about to create. Sheriff Kowalski moved closer, his hand resting on his radio for immediate backup, while Maxine Morgan documented every fraudulent claim Karen made about livestock behavior. The critical moment arrived when Karen reached the gate to Thunder's domain. My prize Black Angus bulls, 1,800 pounds each of pure muscle and territorial instinct, were grazing peacefully in the afternoon heat, unaware they were about to become unwilling participants in Karen's final gambit. "Now watch as I demonstrate how safe these animals really are," Karen announced, her voice carrying across the pasture with absolute confidence born of complete ignorance about bull psychology. "The rancher wants you to believe they're dangerous, but they're just oversized cows." She opened the gate without permission, without consultation, without any understanding of what she was unleashing. The metallic clang of the latch echoed across the pasture like a gunshot, and Thunder's massive head lifted immediately at the sound of strangers entering his territory. "Come closer, everyone," Karen encouraged, waving families forward with her clipboard like she was directing traffic. "These gentle giants love attention from children." The crowd pressed forward, excited parents lifting small children for better views, while Karen basked in the attention of local news cameras. She had no idea that intact breeding bulls aren't dairy cows, that territorial instincts don't recognize educational purposes, and that 1,800 pounds of agitated beef doesn't care about HOA authority. Thunder began displaying classic warning behaviors that any rancher would recognize instantly. Head lowering, pawing the ground with hooves that could crush concrete, snorting through nostrils that flared with territorial aggression. His muscles tensed like coiled springs as the crowd noise increased and unfamiliar scents invaded his domain. Karen completely misinterpreted these danger signals as friendly curiosity, encouraging families to move even closer while she filmed herself petting Thunder's massive flank. "See how docile and sweet he is?" This proves that some ranchers deliberately exaggerate dangers to avoid community cooperation. That's when Thunder decided he'd had enough of uninvited guests in his territory. The charge wasn't malicious. Bulls don't attack to injure, they charge to establish dominance and clear their space. But 1,800 pounds of muscle moving at 20 miles per hour doesn't distinguish between educational purposes and actual threats. Thunder's territorial display was pure livestock psychology, textbook behavior that any competent rancher would expect under these circumstances. The sound was like thunder itself, hooves pounding packed earth, while Thunder's massive form bore down on the crowd with the inevitability of natural law. Karen's bullhorn hit the ground as she realized her educational demonstration had just become a lesson in why you don't turn bull pastures into tourist attractions. Chaos erupted instantly. Parents grabbed children and ran toward the fence in a panicked stampede that kicked up dust clouds visible from the county road. Karen herself sprinted faster than Olympic athletes despite her designer heels, her safety vest flapping behind her like a flag of surrender while she screamed about vicious animals and deliberate endangerment. The beautiful irony was that Thunder never intended to hurt anyone. He simply wanted to reclaim his territory from invaders who didn't belong there. After establishing his dominance, he calmly returned to grazing while 200 people pressed against my fence posts, breathing hard and questioning everything Karen had told them about livestock safety. Marcus Thompson's cameras captured every moment, Karen opening the gate without permission, encouraging dangerous proximity to breeding bulls, then screaming accusations about trained attack animals, when her own ignorance created the predictable result. "That woman nearly got my children killed," one father shouted, his voice carrying across the pasture as Karen tried to reorganize her scattered festival. "She said they were safe as dairy cows." The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Karen had endangered innocent families through criminal negligence, fraudulent claims about her authority, and complete ignorance about livestock behavior. Every moment was documented in high definition by multiple cameras, creating the perfect record of reckless endangerment that would destroy her in both criminal and civil court. As emergency vehicles arrived to clear confused families from my property, Karen spotted County Commissioner Williams pulling into the parking area. She ran toward his official vehicle in desperate panic, not realizing that Marcus Thompson's telephoto lens was capturing every moment of their coordination. The trap had sprung perfectly, and Karen was about to discover that her political protection had just become her final liability. The convergence was perfect, like watching all the pieces of a complex military operation come together at precisely the right moment. As emergency vehicles cleared panicked families from my property and Karen's illegal festival collapsed into chaos, the real show was just beginning. Local news crews swarmed the scene after bull stampede videos went viral on social media within minutes. The metallic crunch of camera equipment being positioned mixed with the distant sound of confused voices as festival-goers demanded answers about what had just happened. Karen's educational demonstration had become the lead story on every local station, but not in the way she'd planned. County Commissioner Williams arrived in his official vehicle just as Karen reached peak desperation, and Marcus Thompson's telephoto lens captured every moment of their panicked coordination. The corrupt politician stepped out wearing the expression of a man who just realized his gravy train was about to derail in spectacular fashion. "Williams is here," I announced to Maxine through my radio. "Time to spring the trap." Karen rushed toward Williams like a drowning woman reaching for a life preserver, not realizing that their public meeting was being filmed by professional equipment that could count the sweat drops on their foreheads. Her safety vest was torn, her designer hair was disheveled, and her clipboard of fake authority looked like it had been trampled by the same bulls she'd claimed were harmless pets. That's when FBI Special Agent Sarah Rodriguez stepped out of an unmarked sedan that had been positioned strategically in the parking area. Maxine's federal connections had delivered exactly when we needed them most, and Agent Rodriguez had been monitoring Williams' corruption for months while building a case that would destroy his political career permanently. "Commissioner Williams," Agent Rodriguez called out in a voice that carried the unmistakable authority of federal law enforcement, "I'd like to have a word with you about some financial irregularities we've discovered." Williams went pale as courthouse marble, his political instincts telling him to run while his guilty conscience rooted him in place like fence posts. Karen looked back and forth between her corrupt protector and the federal agent with the dawning realization that her entire criminal empire was collapsing in real time. The moment had come for my own public statement. I stepped forward with the bullhorn Karen had dropped during her sprint from Thunder's charge, addressing the crowd of confused families who'd been lied to about everything from livestock safety to legal authority. "Folks, I want you to know the truth about what happened here today," I announced, my voice carrying across pastures that had witnessed 3 generations of honest ranching. Karen Rutherford has been operating an illegal HOA for 2 years, collecting fraudulent fees and wielding authority she never legally possessed. The crowd's murmur rose like summer thunder as Maxine Morgan emerged from the barn carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would destroy lives and careers. She handed copies of documents to news reporters while explaining in clear legal language how Karen's entire operation had been systematic criminal fraud. "The HOA charter expired in 2022, Maxine announced to the gathered media. "Every fee collected, every fine issued, every permit obtained under HOA authority has been illegal. We're talking about federal mail fraud, conspiracy, and public corruption charges." Karen's complete meltdown was spectacular to witness. She grabbed a microphone from the abandoned DJ booth and screamed about conspiracies and vindictive ranchers, while accidentally confessing to taking developer money for property acquisitions. FBI Agent Rodriguez stepped forward to request a private conversation with Williams, who looked like he was attending his own funeral. Marcus Thompson played the audio recording of Karen bragging about teaching stubborn ranchers lessons, while video screens showed her encouraging families to enter the bull pasture despite clear warning signs. The evidence avalanche buried her deeper with every passing moment. "This woman deliberately endangered children," shouted one angry parent whose family had been caught in Thunder's charge. "She told us those bulls were harmless as pets." Sheriff Kowalski stepped forward to address the crowd with 30 years of law enforcement credibility behind his words. "I've been documenting safety violations and criminal trespass all day," he announced. "Karen Rutherford ignored multiple warnings about livestock dangers while claiming authority she never possessed." The community uprising was immediate and overwhelming. Homeowners demanded refunds of illegally collected fees. 3 other harassment victims spoke publicly about Karen's intimidation tactics. Local farmers pledged support for criminal prosecution, while regional media representatives called their stations with breaking news about the biggest corruption scandal in county history. Process servers emerged from the crowd like ghosts materializing in daylight, handing Karen lawsuit papers, while Agent Rodriguez placed Williams under federal investigation for ethics violations. The state HOA board representative announced immediate charter revocation for fraudulent operations. Karen sat alone in her Escalade as the sun set on her criminal empire, scrolling through a resignation letter while FBI agents escorted Williams for voluntary questioning. Festival equipment was being impounded as evidence while families who'd trusted her educational claims filed police reports about endangered children. The perfect irony was complete. Karen's own festival had become the venue for her public destruction, amplified by equipment she'd rented and witnessed by crowds she'd assembled. Justice had 1,800-pound hooves, and it had trampled her completely. My grandfather's land was finally safe, and the predator who'd hunted it was being led away in federal custody. 1 week after Karen's spectacular public meltdown, the cleanup was as satisfying as morning coffee on a peaceful ranch. Karen resigned from all positions and put her house up for sale, the for sale sign appearing faster than a rattlesnake strike. Commissioner Williams was suspended pending federal investigation, his political career deader than roadkill on a Texas highway. The illegal HOA dissolved by state order, and homeowners received refunds totaling $47,000 in fraudulent fees. My property boundaries were legally clarified through proper survey, gaining me the 2 disputed acres that included Karen's fancy entrance monument dash, which I immediately had torn down and replaced with a simple wooden sign reading Morrison Ranch-Est, 1962. Tintas. Legal victories piled up like hay bales in a good season. The class action lawsuit settled for $180,000, with Karen paying from her home sale proceeds. Federal corruption charges sent Williams to 18 months in federal prison after he took a plea deal faster than a politician reversing campaign promises. The state ethics board permanently barred Karen from any HOA positions, ensuring she'd never terrorize homeowners again. Maxine's legal fees were covered by the settlement, plus damages for harassment that paid for new fencing and a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. The best part? My legal costs were minimal, thanks to those quitam whistleblower provisions that let citizens fight fraud while keeping a percentage of recovered funds. Here are the 3 key takeaways every property owner needs to remember. First, always verify HOA legal status with state records before paying any fees. Fraudulent HOAs are more common than people realize. Second, agricultural right-to-farm laws protect established operations from nuisance complaints, but you must document everything and know your state's specific protections. Third, modern smartphones make building evidence cases easier than ever. Document harassment, record conversations where legal, and save every threatening letter or fraudulent claim. The community healing exceeded my wildest expectations. New homeowners elected a legitimate HOA board focused on cooperation rather than intimidation. They invited me to serve as agricultural liaison, which I politely declined. I'd had enough of committees to last several lifetimes. Instead, we established the annual Bulls and BBQ Festival on my land, properly permitted and genuinely educational about rural life. My PTSD symptoms improved dramatically through community support and the satisfaction of protecting other families from Karen's predatory schemes. The Hero Ranch branding took off at farmers markets, where organic beef sales doubled as customers wanted to support the veteran who'd stood up to corruption. My grandfather's legacy was not only protected, but thriving in ways he never could have imagined. The broader impact rippled outward like stones thrown in still water. My story inspired state legislation strengthening protections for family farms against HOA overreach. National media coverage sparked conversations about development pressure on agriculture. 3 other states passed similar right-to-farm laws after seeing how bureaucratic harassment could destroy generational properties. I placed 35 acres under permanent conservation easement, partnering with the State University for Sustainable Ranching Research. The land became a model for heritage breed preservation, with educational tours for urban families learning about food sources. Thunder, Diesel, and Maverick became local celebrities, their territorial display having saved not just my ranch, but countless others from similar predators. Personal transformation came quietly, like dawn breaking over familiar pastures. The Marine who'd sought solitude found strength in community connections. Defensive isolation transformed into confident leadership as other farmers faced similar battles. My grandfather's teachings about standing up to bullies were validated in ways that would have made him proud. But that's not the end of my battles with petty tyrants masquerading as public servants. Next week, I'll tell you about my new neighbor who tried to steal my water rights using a fake drought emergency and forged environmental impact studies. You won't believe what I found when I dug into her background. Let's just say Karen Rutherford wasn't the only predator hunting rural properties in Texas. The war against bureaucratic bullies never really ends, but now I know something that gives me complete confidence. They're counting on you being too tired to fight back, too isolated to organize resistance, too intimidated by their fake authority to expose their crimes. Prove them wrong, document everything, build alliances, fight back with everything you've got. Drop a comment with your own HOA nightmare story. I read every single one, and some of yours are crazier than mine. Hit that subscribe button because I've got more stories about standing up to bullies, and trust me, they get even wilder from here. Remember, your ancestors didn't fight for this land so you could surrender it to clipboard-carrying tyrants. Sometimes the best defense is letting bullies destroy themselves with their own arrogance, then making sure justice has 1,800-pound hooves. The sun sets peaceful now over land that's finally, legally, undisputedly mine.
That's all for today's HOA Madness. If watching justice serve itself made your day, smash that like button, share your thoughts down below, and make sure you're subscribed. More outrageous neighborhood showdowns are just around the corner.